Alright, it's time for another update and forecast on the Washburn fire. Throughout this video, we're going to be focusing on where the fire has grown over the last 48 hours, and then also a little fire weather forecast to see where we can expect this growth to happen in the future. And then we also have a little simulation of this wildfire at the end of the forecast that I haven't shown in previous videos, so that'll be something new to check out at the end. But before we get into the Google Earth map, first thing I always like to do is just look at the smoke coming off of the fire, and it's interesting to look at this satellite imagery right now because it really doesn't look like there is much smoke coming off of it anymore. If I go back to the beginning here, right here you can see where the fire is. I'm circling it with the cursor, and in previous afternoons we've had a large amount of smoke coming off of it. And it's especially been in the afternoons when you get hotter, when you get drier. But the interesting thing about today is it actually looks like the smoke dies down in the afternoon, which is a very good sign, I might say. Now, with that, we can also look at watch duty to see what kind of new information was coming out today. At 8:41 a.m., they said it was mapped at 4,734 acres as of last night. At 12:16 p.m., they said the fire was now mapped at 4,814 acres, including all spot fires. So the key thing that I'd think about right there is that's only an increase of, less than 100 acres? So that is great news right there. My master's thesis, where I basically built a machine learning model that predicts large fire days. How I defined large fire day is more than 10,000 acres burned over a 24-hour period. So the fact that over, between data, let's just call it 6 to 12 hours, there was only 100 acres burned, that's a very good sign right there. And then it also shows, the map shows that it's 4,814 acres and 31% contained. And something that we can do is actually see where that containment is by looking at this map. And you notice it's all the western sides of this fire. And key thing that I would point out here is when we first started looking at this fire, our two main areas of concern were Wawona, which is up on the northwest. You can see where some of those structures would be. And then also the Mariposa Grove, which has the 500 giant sequoias. Now, I'll never claim that an area is completely safe in these videos, but it's looking pretty good, and I'll have some more reasons to back that up in just a second. But especially around Wawona, it looks like that containment line, which is shown in the black color there, is pretty well established on that northwestern section. Looks like it goes all the way around the south here, and then even around parts of Mariposa Grove as well. And the last report I was reading, the wildland fire personnel in this area basically said that they're not all that concerned about the Mariposa Grove any longer. Now, something else we can do here is just look at the overall details that they're giving on this. I mainly wanted to show this because total personnel is up to 1,534 personnel, which is way up from where it was a couple of days ago when we were still at maybe 200 or 300. So great to just see they are throwing all the resources they have at this fire. Now, when it talks about the fuels involved, that's been something that has allowed this fire to grow as much as it has. A lot of dead, dry fuel in this area. And when it looks at the outlook and the weather concerns, that's where they are predicting active fire behavior over the next 12 to 24 hours, and then even through the weekend as things get warmer and drier. And then the reason that they're predicting that is actually because of the weather concerns, the fact that we have the peak of the warming trend on Saturday, which means not only warmer temperatures, but drier relative humidity as well. And drier the air is, drier the fuels get, easier it is for the fire to spread. Now, with all that being said, when we look at a couple of these maps, and just looking at that smoke map right off the bat, things, I will say, are looking fairly good despite the fact that right now has much worse fire weather conditions than the last few days, and then tomorrow is actually expected to have worse conditions than today. So one thing that we can do is just see where this growth was the past couple of days. And also, we could actually just break down the entire lifetime of this fire. So there's July 9th, July 10th, and one thing, notice what direction a lot of the growth is in. It really tells you what direction the afternoon winds have mostly been in, from the southwest and that westerly direction, and also those up canyon winds as well. So that's July 10th, July 11th, July 12th, July 13th, July 14th, and then our most recent data is that. One sec, I'm gonna see if I could turn off these little X's. I think it's those ones. There we go. Sorry, that would just bother me. So July 15th, you notice not all that much growth. It doesn't look like there's any new growth on that southern section. No new growth around Wawona, where that matches up with that containment black line that we were looking at earlier. But we do still have some growth on this northeastern section. So we'll just zoom in here and see what kind of conditions we have in this area. So it looks like the rest of this fire has gone down right along the base of this valley. So I wouldn't be surprised if this continued to come down right there, although I will say I don't know if they have some good fire retardant line in there or something that's stopping it right there. But just the fact that the rest of this seems to go right along that line makes me think that fire will come down to this line. And for that to happen, it would most likely be overnight tonight, because during the day you get winds that go uphill. During the night you get winds that go downhill. So it'll be interesting to see if the next data we look at, that fire has pushed downhill right there. But I think the area that, if I had to forecast growth on this more than anywhere else, it would be in this area right here. Now, based on the smoke imagery, doesn't look like there's going to be all that much more growth on this fire. But if there was more growth on this fire, what I'm saying is it would be in this area, because that's going along with the dominant wind direction that we've been getting in these afternoons, and then it just also looks like there's a lot of fuel right there. So I'm not going to say the fire's wrapped up by any standards, especially when we're looking at this information and they are still predicting active fire behavior over the next 72 hours. You can see active to very active fire behavior over the next 72 hours. So keep that in mind. But just looking at where the growth was the last couple of days, looking at this map, which usually has a bunch of red dots on it, which show where the hot spots are, does look like there's still some of those hot spots popping up outside of the previous fire perimeter. And then another map where we can look at some recent hot spots is this one. We're zooming in there. It's picking up a minimal amount of heat on that northeastern section still showing some of that hotspot activity. But the two areas that we were mostly concerned about, Wawona and Mariposa Grove, not seeing any hotspots around those areas as of right now. So that's some pretty good news. And let's turn on fire history here. I wouldn't actually be too worried about that hotspot right there. That's why I always have kind of a caveat with this map, is because sometimes it shows a bunch of heat. That doesn't actually mean the fire's moved right there. If we turn that off, you can see that the South Fork fire burned in 2017, and so far with this fire, it's almost been like a puzzle piece, where the Washburn fire bumped into the South Fork and then just stopped in its tracks. So I do not think that hotspot right there is indicative of new growth, considering how well the South Fork has stopped this fire in the past, as well as all the wildland fire personnel. And then also, we're not seeing all that much smoke coming off of this right now, so it doesn't look like it's grown in that direction. Now, don't want to give anybody a false sense of confidence. If we look at I forget where I read this, but I think it was right here. So looking to repopulate Wawona for residents and property owners only on Sunday morning, but still under assessment, and that time frame is an estimate. So more info on that will be out Saturday morning, and I put the link for this in the description as well. So right now they're thinking maybe repopulate Wawona Sunday morning, but we're just going to have to stay tuned on that one. And if you want to stay tuned, Watch Duty is a great place to do it. Another place is the Yosemite National Park Public Information Map. I put this in the description as well. Right now we still have all these evacuation orders in place. That red means that it is an order. It's not like an advisory or a suggestion. But we'll have to just stay tuned and keep looking at this map because of what we just read on Watch Duty, where it looks like they want to make some lifts on Sunday morning, and then also just due to the lack of smoke that we're seeing on this fire right now. Now, overall summary of the fire, looking fairly good right now. When it comes to the fire weather forecast, this is, again, I don't want to say the fire weather forecast looks bad, because today was supposed to be worse than yesterday, and it doesn't look worse than yesterday. But fire weather forecast-wise, Saturday is the peak of this warming trend. Winds have basically been the exact same this entire fire, mostly driven by topography. 25-mile-per-hour gusts from the southwest in the afternoons, which has been pushing this fire towards the northeast. If we look at temperatures tomorrow, going to be fairly warm, 87 degrees right there. Relative humidity down into the teens. So that goes along with what we've been talking about all week, where Saturday was the peak of this warm, dry trend that we've been seeing. So I'm by no means saying that the fire's over. I'm actually going to be watching it very closely tomorrow to just see exactly what happens with that interaction of not seeing much smoke or behavior right now, but tomorrow is the warmest and driest day of the week. Now, something that we can do is actually look at the Wharf S-Fire model. Now, I'm going to do a big disclaimer on this one. This is an experimental forecast only, and what this does is it basically takes in every variable you could possibly imagine. The topography, the fuel moisture, the temperature, relative humidity, the winds, the wind direction, the hot spots on the fire, everything you can imagine with wildfire, even how the fire would create its own weather, which would then influence the fire. That's one of the things that sets this model apart. It does that, I would say, better than any other model out there. But with all that being said, amazing model. This was developed by Adam Kochanski, who's now one of my advisors at San Jose State. The disclaimer on this is it doesn't take into account wildland fire operations. So that's where we might have some great retardant lines around this and not expecting any further growth because those lines are holding. Actually, there is one line I can bring out. Fire is approximately actively chewing through the retardant lines put in place yesterday afternoon. Several copters are working to keep it in check. So that was yesterday at 11:41. That's the last we've heard about how the retardant lines were holding up. Based on all the information we've looked at, it looks like those retardant lines are holding up. But I guess I'll just show this model. So keep in mind, takes in all the science factors, but it doesn't take into account the management factors. So just gonna press play there. And the first thing I notice is that if you look at this little clock at the bottom, that shows 11:30 today. Didn't really forecast all that much growth. And then the places where it did forecast that growth throughout the day today was in the afternoon hours and towards that easterly direction. So it'll be interesting to see if when we get tomorrow's data, if that ends up being true. But overall, I'd say it looks like that would be true because we haven't seen that much growth. But if we have seen growth, it has been in that easterly direction. What I'm more interested in is what it's showing for tomorrow. So this is going to be in the morning. You notice those winds are going downhill right there. That's why I was talking about it pushing up against that line earlier. But then as we get into the afternoon, you're going to see these winds start to shift around And as they do, it's going to influence the direction of spread to push it further towards the east, but then also down towards the south. Now it's interesting that it's now moving to the south, but that's going to make sense if we look at how the canyons are actually changing direction. So the last couple of days, it's been moving this direction. You can see its movement has almost been parallel to the bottom of that canyon. But as we go to this side over here, you notice that canyon kind of changes direction there. So now the model is predicting that if we do have growth, it'll be over here. But we are just going to have to see that, because wait and see if that does come true, because right now doesn't look like we're seeing all that much growth. So I think it seems like those management factors are playing a very important role in this fire as of right now. So overall, I would say pretty good news on this fire, considering today is one of the warmest and driest of the week. With that being said, I'm going to be watching this one closely tomorrow, because that's actually the peak of this warming and drying trend. So if you want to stay tuned on this fire, and actually all fires throughout this wildfire season, I'll be making these updates every single day, and I hope that this one was helpful, and thanks for watching.